Let's jump into the coaches. Now, the 6 head coaches are settled, and we thought we'd give a grade for each one. And the way I'm approaching this is it's not just the coach himself, but the process, the staff that he surrounded himself with at this point.
Whole thing.
Yeah, the whole ball of wax. And I think we should start. It's the easy one to me.
We're obviously not going to do New Orleans because they'd get an F regardless of what they're going to do. Either the names remaining, Darren Rizzi and Kellen Moore likely would get an F from me anyways, because I think Rizzi's a great special teams coordinator. I know he did impress in other interviews with the Jets. He did a really good job commanding the room. Players love him. Still would be an F for me. So
it's clear that the way the rest of the coaches in this search viewed that situation was basically like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yep.
You know, like even Aaron Glenn, who obviously ties there, and Sean Payton and the whole 9 yards. And like, I want New York, man. I don't want New Orleans. New Orleans has the cap issues that they've kicked for a million years. The general manager, Mickey Loomis, appears to be going nowhere. He essentially runs the team. Like he essentially owns the team, even though he's not the owner. So it is a unique situation. It appears Kellen Moore was probably the odds-on favorite to get it. I have questions about that as well. He's got no choice but to take the job because he may not get another opportunity like this. But yeah, you're fair. So let's start with the other one to me that just jumped out as a F, 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 F. And that's the Dallas Cowboys hiring Brian Schottenheimer. This is about as uninspired a hire as a team could make. It was so clear that Jerry wanted Mike McCarthy to stay, but he wanted him to stay at his price. Couldn't get McCarthy. They did some sham interviews. Leslie Frazier was one of the people they brought in here, but that Schottenheimer emerged pretty quickly as the guy that was going to get the job. And look, when Schottenheimer was the OC in Seattle for several years, they were a top 10 in DVOA for 3 straight years. That was almost prime Russell, close to prime Russell. So he had that going for him. And I don't know that he's a bad coach. I'm not going to say that. I'm not rooting against him. I'm just saying the process in and of itself, that Dallas Cowboy job should be the job in the league, in this cycle, even with the Jets, with the Patriots and their recent history of winning Super Bowls. That should have been the job. Ben Johnson should have wanted that job, right? Bill Belichick would more than have been willing, I think, had he not signed on with North Carolina, to get involved in that mix. Would Mike Vrabel have been interested as the other hot guy and the coach? Would he? I bet he would have been. When you're talking about, oh, you're giving me Dak Prescott, who's a borderline top 10 quarterback. I know some people this way, some people that way, but like he's a good, proven player, supposed to be back. CeeDee Lamb is one of the best receivers in football, top 5 easy, right? Micah Parsons, had he been healthy for the entire year, the way he played in the second half of the year was defensive player of the year. That's how good he was. And that's, you look at his history, he's been awesome. They got to pay him, but like you have some incredible building blocks to start with. And instead, Jerry Jones fumbles through the process and signs off on Brian Schottenheimer. And then actually in the press conference, if you watch it, you should go watch it. Actually, I advise any of you who watched all 32, go find Jerry Jones press conference introducing Schottenheimer and tell yourself he insulted Schottenheimer about 4 different times, whether he meant to or not. It was like he was tearing up. He was talking about himself and what he's trying to do. And it's
like, neighbor's house.
What the hell are we doing? Like, honestly, that job forever and a day was the job in the league, and it is not. And this is evident because ownership seems to have their head firmly stuck up their ass.
Yeah, no, I won't go too long on this one. I'm going to give it a D. I think there's something to be said that Dak probably had to sign off on this to some extent with Shoddy, and he has continuity with him. And I think maybe that's the one redeeming quality. Eberflus is a solid, not great, not bad DC. So, maybe he stems the tide a little on defense. I don't know. I'm trying here. It's a D. It's maybe a D minus. It's Shoddy probably deserved a shot, no pun intended, in 2011, and then maybe again in 2018 and 19 and 20, and it never happened. And now it feels too late. It's more that I don't even necessarily think it's the hire as much as the process. So late. They thought McCarthy would take a 1-year extension. He obviously didn't. They missed out on Vrabel and Belichick, as you mentioned. They missed out on Glenn and these other guys. All the coordinators were like, dude, we're already 2-3 interviews deep with other teams. Yep. We're not going to just restart the process. So, I'll keep it short. I'll go D minus here. The process sucked. The hire might be fine, but it doesn't inspire you. And then the coordinators are also like, fine, cool. You're probably going 9-8 next year at best, unless something changes.
Yeah, you could tell me with the building blocks that they have, if Schottenheimer does a respectable job, they could be a 9 or 10 win team. Absolutely. We thought they were bottoming out this year at points, and they still finished with 7 wins, which is kind of a credit to Mike McCarthy, who, again, I don't love as a coach, but there is a track record there. He knows how to do it. Now Schottenheimer is on a difficult situation here where he's going to have to figure it out on the fly and deal with his owner criticizing him every week in his post-game. The owner has the post-game press conferences and his own radio show during the week. How about Jacksonville? Grabbing Liam Cohen. What do you got for a grade?
I'll go B minus. So I think the process sucked. So that they get major points. Cohen was third for me for the Jets list. I mean, it was before I heard him talk, and I did more digging into the fact that it's a new job every year. I think it's it's the smart hire for Trevor Lawrence. The organization wanted some offense. All those things are true. Cohen was a hotshot candidate. He's going to have his own, say in that building. And there's something to be said for going out and getting your guy and you steal him from your in-state rival and you create a rivalry there. And that stuff's cool. So I could have gone B plus because I think the offensive mind is worth it. But I almost debated going C plus here. The process was, if not as bad as Dallas's, it might have been worse. And if Cohen was always your guy, why not just fire Baalke? If Cohen wasn't your guy and it was Ben Johnson, you still should have fired Trent Baalke. And if Trent Baalke was your guy, you should have stuck with your conviction and said, who cares what the fans want? They're not in my seat. They don't own the team. And you should have hired Robert Saleh like you clearly wanted to. So it was make up your mind. And that's where I'll give him a B minus because I'll try to be nice and say, I'm going to go C plus. I just, the more you talk through it, the more it's give Liam Cohen $13 million a year in organizational control as the guy who's a one-year NFL coordinator. It might work. You might get McVay in terms of the offensive side of the ball. And it's a little, maybe not McVay in terms of he's a little corny and whatever, but maybe Trevor Lawrence is a top 10 guy this year and it's worth it. But it's only going to be worth it because it's that market. And I just think if that's anywhere else, I just don't know. I don't know. So I'll go C plus, B minus, but leaning C plus, the process was horrible.
So I wrote down, obviously Cohen's a smart guy. He's creative. I think he has what I would call a user-friendly offense. He was able to get a lot of different pieces to elevate this year. The screen game with Bucky Irving, the run game in period with Bucky Irving was outstanding. Jalen McMillan, who I think was a third-round pick out of University of Washington, had a terrific second half of the season, catching touchdown passes, it seemed, every week. You mentioned the thing that really concerns me. Liam Cohen has never stayed in one place. He is 1 year and he's to the next one, and 1 year and to the next one. And some of that wasn't his decision. Some of that was their decision too. So you have to wonder about I don't know, what's the personality like and what's led to some of these quick breakups aside from him trying to climb the ladder as fast as humanly possible. But to me, I go C minus on this, and I go C minus for what you mentioned. It's the Trent Baalke factor. Ownership knew he was a problem. Coaches let it be known, coaches that were involved in this interview cycle, that Baalke was a problem. Ben Johnson was, from all I can gather, from an ownership standpoint, that was the guy they wanted. And they played it so poorly that Ben Johnson, no thanks, I'm going to go to Chicago, which, by the way, their ownership situation and their front office situation is not exactly the cleanest, right? So to me, if you wanted Ben Johnson, you should have done what you needed to do to get Ben Johnson as your head coach. And if that meant, like you said, immediately firing Trent Baalke when you fired Doug Peterson, then that's what you do. Otherwise, you say, no, I stood by this guy and we're gonna do this thing and we're gonna let him hire him. And I'm probably gonna regret it, but he's my GM and I have faith in him. And now you're putting all your eggs in the Liam Cohen basket, and there's just not nearly enough of a track record of being a a leader of men in a franchise. I mean, he's the offensive coordinator for 1 year in Tampa Bay. So, yeah, I hated that whole process. Let's go to the Raiders, who are spending ridiculous amounts of money. I've heard rumblings of Pete's around $15 million a year, which tends to make sense when you look at the coaching hierarchy and some past success. Might be a little south of that. But they also just got Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator for $6 million a year from Ohio State. Chip, of course, coached in the league a couple different times, Philadelphia and San Francisco, both kind of washed out very quickly as a head coach. But his offensive coordinator, he's a Ohio State won the national championship, and he just did a nice job of streamlining things for them. Patrick Graham is coming back as the DC. He got a nice raise. He was making $3 million last year. He's getting more this year. So good, professional, been there, done that kind of staff. That said, I still felt like this was a Brady wanted Ben Johnson scenario. And so I'll give it a B- because I think they raised the floor of what they're capable of doing there, certainly having lived through the McDaniels struggles with Dave Ziegler and then the Antonio Pierce, although Telesco actually drafted well, just didn't, the free agents didn't work out so well. But so I say like a B- for bringing Pete Carroll back.
That's what he did with the Chargers too. It was terrible in free agency. I'm going to go B because I think they fell ass backwards into the staff. They showed full ass to go get Ben Johnson. It was everywhere and anywhere, and comes out Ben Johnson was always apparently going to the Bears. Yeah, although that's always what ends up getting said afterwards. I think Pete's going to be a really good job. Diana Rossini was on Ron Russo's pod and talked about how the Raiders view this as like Pete's going to clear everything out in that building, is going to totally redo everything, and if he's there a year or he's there 3 or 4 years, like they're good with both. If it takes them to get to their hotshot coordinator for Brady, but like they need someone to come in there and totally reset this building. For that reason, I think it would have been closer to an A. I think Pete's awesome. I think he'll bring new energy there and a lot of different stuff. And like they're spending on coordinators. And I thought Chip was probably the best coordinator on the market in terms of like pedigree and all these different things. I mean, Chip's not a good head coach. Very McDaniels like, where like you love the OC hire, you hate.
Yeah, he's been head coach. Like, what? Coach. Yeah.
I'm only going B because, again, I don't think their process, like, and Spytek's a really good hire too. Like, the hires are really good. It just felt like this isn't at all what their plan was. And if this isn't your plan, it's hard for me to give you credit when you got told no. So you pivoted to a guy that Pete kind of was going to be selective, as he should have been. But yeah, I'll go B. I'll keep it simple here. I think probably trending towards B+. I think Patrick Graham might be a little overrated, but to keep continuity there, it makes sense. So the Raiders offseason will be more of an in totality situation, but right now it's trending in a decent direction.
Yeah, I mean, they're another team in this period that they need to find a quarterback, right? And it's, again, as we've discussed, not exactly the greatest time to be looking for a quarterback, especially a young one with the way the draft is. But even then, is it Kirk Cousins?
Sam?
Is it Sam? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Like for a year with the relationship with Brady?
Up with like Sam and like something else, and like now we could start to compete. Draft.
Yeah, keep Aiden O'Connell because he's cheap.
Yeah,
Sam and I don't know, draft Quinn Ewers in the 3rd round or something like that. And then see if you find something there. Ben Johnson's next on my list, and obviously Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel were the two hottest names, I guess, in this coaching search. Aaron Glenn would be, I think, just on the outside looking in of that group, at least in terms of the way it was viewed. So I'm going to give the Chicago Bears a B for this hire. I think Johnson showed that he has a great touch with the offense, creative game plans each and every week, creative ways to get the ball in playmakers' hands. As an offensive coordinator who likes to throw the ball, occasionally he fell into that trap, including in the playoff loss, but showed good balance, generally getting Gibbs and Montgomery the football. In fact, Gibbs really blossomed this year and became a star. I like the DC hire here, Dennis Allen. Again, not a good head coach. Dennis Allen, one of the best defensive coordinators we've had in football for the last 15 years. Like, not the top of the top, but damn good. So Johnson's going to call plays. Dennis Allen on the other side sets them up for good success. I would just say the inexperience here. So you're going from Eberflus, who was, again, solid coordinator type, didn't do a great job of leading men. Now you're putting Johnson in that position, and we'll see. You never totally know if a guy can go from coordinator, hotshot coordinator, to first-time head coach and what that looks like. But by and large, the marriage of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams and some of the offensive pieces they have seems to make a lot of sense. I will continue to say this until I'm blue in the face or proven otherwise, that the leadership in the front office is a little confusing. Kevin Warren is the team president. Ryan Poles is the general manager. Who really has the power? Who's Ben Johnson actually answering to? If who's throwing who under the bus if things start to go sideways, which, we see that happen all the time. But thought about B+, just in general, still a little reservations about who Chicago is as a franchise that kind of held me back on that one.
Yeah, I have reservations about who Ben Johnson is and if he can be a head coach. Just a lot of Gase. He's his mentor. There's a little Gase-ish there. It was kind of salesy, corporate.
And you still have PTSD from the Gase era.
Yeah, so I'll go B+ though, because I think the Bears, this was their guy. This was the guy I wanted them to get. I thought he was the best chance of – my only question with them is, is he fit Caleb? Does Caleb fit him in terms of an offensive structure? All that said, Ben's very smart. If he calls a really good job and Dennis Allen kind of just, we saw it for years in New Orleans, we saw it even back with the Raiders. Just let Dennis Allen call the defense. She'll be a top 5 defense every year. That's just kind of what it is. So I'll go B+ here. Again, I'll keep this one short. I still, JT Barrett was a nice hire. I still have some questions for the Bears about the power structure, as you mentioned, the organization as a whole. And I thought their process was just as lengthy as the Jets, and they got no heat for it. So kind of interesting. But all that said, they got their guy. They got the best DC on the market. And that's hard to not give that a B+. I'll go B+. Like I said, I go B+. Not my favorite candidate, but was arguably the best candidate on the market.
Yeah, it's what they wanted. He was the hot guy, turned down jobs last year, takes this job this year. Yeah, I can't fault him for who they landed on when that's the guy they wanted all along. If that's your vision, pairing him with the young quarterback and hoping that you develop the young quarterback who, as we know, is wildly talented. Questions about maybe some of his, just competitiveness, whatever. And can you coach I want to hang on to the ball for 3.5 seconds on every drop back. Can you coach that out of him? That'll be pretty important. Let's go to the next one for me. I'll go first, and then I'll let you tell me why I'm wrong. Aaron Glenn gets a B+. The Jets, they get a B+ in this process. Little lengthy in terms of the number of people they talk to, but actually, the more I think about it, I kind of like it. Just you're constantly filtering ideas. Borrowing ideas. The only thing I would have liked in this process had the general manager already been in place, so the general manager could have been also filtering in these ideas. So it wasn't just Woody Johnson and the search team. It was Moogs. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. The 39-year-old they hired from Denver who's 6'8" as the general manager. But in Aaron Glenn, they got what I think they've been lacking for some time. I think it's a clear leader of their football organization. I think this guy has a vision for how he wants it to be. I think his experience in the market I cannot underplay it. And I think we saw it with the Q&A after the press conference where he's getting asked the same question about Aaron Rodgers in 9 different ways. And he's like, I already answered it. You want me to answer it again? I'll answer it again. But it takes a little something for someone who's been there and knows it. And I know we're going to have back and forth. And I'm just letting you know that I'm game and I'm good for it. Let's do it. You want to do it? We'll do it. But I'm setting an expectation of how this is going to go. And lastly, and I don't think he gets enough credit for this, and we talked about the Lions with all the injuries defensively, they reached a breaking point in it should have been late October, early November. And he kept it together until December. And then they had the one good defensive performance basically from December on. And that was to win the number 1 seed in week 18 against Minnesota. I give him credit for that. Minnesota was playing great football. They kind of broke Minnesota in the process. And I know they flamed out in the playoffs, and he'll have to live with that. They'll all have to swallow that. But he did a damn good job without Aiden Hutchinson, without Al McNeil, just name it. Everybody was off that defense for I think they had 16 guys on the injured reserve or something. It was just stupid. And they were still able to cobble it together and win football games up until the postseason with not the ideal amount of talent, certainly not what you thought you had going into the year or even what you had going into October.
Yeah, so I think the GM hire was a B-. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think it's a solid hire. I think I like a lot of what Muji brings. I think scouting background, was successful under Elway, and then worked his way up really quickly. There's a lot to like there.
Did they talk to enough people, in your opinion? Because they talked to every coach.
They
talked to enough general managers.
No, they did. They still had 15 GM interviews. Yeah. It's just, I don't know if, final. I would give it a B in GM if just from the aspect they didn't hire Trey Brown and Lance Newmark, who probably the two most unexciting candidates that they interviewed, other than like John Robinson and Riddick, like that.
I was secretly rooting for them to hire Ryan Grigson just for you to lose your mind. It would have been an emergency pod on your other podcast. We would have had to do an emergency pod here. I might have had to drive to Long Island to talk you down. As a friend, I would have done that.
It would have been bad. So I'll go B- just because there's a lot of unknown. He's 39 years old. Look, he pushed for O'Connell to be hired in Denver over Hackett. He was apparently a part of a lot of these last 3 draft classes, which have been really good in Denver and all that stuff. So there's a lot to want to give him credit for, but again, he was an AGM. He's not experienced. And so I just think you get dinged a little bit for that. So I'll go B-. I think I'm trying to be fair there. I think Glenn's an A-. Vrabel would have been an A for me with the Jets. Glenn's was the step right below him as a candidate. So I think an A- is fair. The process was lengthy, but they said, this is our guy. Someone beat him. And they had 2 weeks to just rattle interviews. Do I wish they were interviewed more offensive guys? Sure, they'll get a little ding for that. Do I wish, they had the GM hire first in a perfect world? Sure, but it doesn't matter. They both report to the owner, so it's not really that relevant. And Glenn is the front-facing guy, similar to Vrabel. So kind of bringing your own guys anyways. So I'll go A- to be fair. But I think B- GM, A- for the head coach. You guys continue to build out the staff on offense, but promising signs of veteran mixed with youth. And then Glenn obviously dominated his opening presser.
I like the Steve Wilks hire as DC2, and maybe not the sexiest hire, but he sort of shares the vision with Glenn in that Glenn likes to be aggressive, play man, blitz, and Wilks is sort of in that same, we're gonna blitz you, we're gonna pressure you, from this side, that side, up the gut, wherever it takes. Try to fool you, cause turnovers. I like that sort of mentality, especially with the players that they have on that defense. Even just the core guys that are still there. I want to let those guys loose and let them play aggressive and go forward.
Yeah, again, like
instead
I said,
of being reactionary.
I have no complaints. Like I said, it's minimal things of just wish they talked to some more offensive guys. Wish they had maybe there was just a few names on there that felt out of place. But again, they get your guy, you get your guy.
Right. All right, last one. Mike Vrabel, head coach, New England Patriots. I'm going to give this a B+. You say, Giardi, tough grader. You don't know A's. Look, he is the absolute. I said it leading up to it. I said it at the time. I'll say it now. He is the absolute right guy for this organization at this time. There's no question. They needed someone who had been there and done that before, someone familiar with the market, someone with past head coaching experience and success. I like that he is old school, but in a new school way, as we talked about sort of his relationship with some of the players and getting those guys, even though he pushed them hard, getting them to play hard for him, being, concerned with stuff that was happening off the field too. So it wasn't just you don't just work for me. There's a relationship we have to have here. And if there are things that are more important or things that are going on in your life that we need to deal with, let's deal with those. And I think that was well respected by the Titans players from top to bottom. My reservation here is his offensive vision in Tennessee wasn't awesome. And look, they kind of stumbled on Arthur Smith if the way you go about it. Arthur sort of embraced the play action stuff with Tannehill, and that sort of elevated Tannehill's game, got him to play the best football of his life. I think obviously making Derrick Henry the centerpiece of your offense makes a lot of sense. The guy's a freak, continues to be a freak here in Baltimore, but they never were that sort of forward-facing is not the right word. They were never that cutting-edge offense. They never pushed it a ton. And obviously when you have a quarterback like Drake May, there's a high ceiling here. Will he allow Josh McDaniels and this cobbled together offensive coaching staff, which again, there's a story in Boston Sports Journal from my boss, Greg Bedard, today, in which he sort of feels like his concerns over the staff and the way it's been put together offensively have been alleviated. I've talked to some people too, and I would say my concerns are lessened, but they're still not. I still have some, and Josh McDaniels, I think was the best hire that they could make for Drake May and for going forward. I'm still not sure that Josh and Mike would have paired up somewhere else, that it might have only been here that it would have happened. And now Todd Downing, former offensive coordinator for Tennessee, former offensive coordinator in New York with the Jets. He's now the wide receiver coach. Doug Marrone, offensive line coach. There are a lot of Vrabel pieces on the offensive staff and not very many, if any, McDaniels pieces. And I know he sat in on these interviews and was part of it. So he has some influence on it, but it's still Mike Vrabel's staff. And I'm just curious when push comes to shove, and there'll be hard times, as there always are during the course of the season, how that staff comes together and deals with the adversity. So Vrabel, right guy, right time, right place, everything. Just would have liked to have seen a little bit more cohesion on the offensive staff.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I think I'll go A- as well for this. It would have been an A+. Vrabel should have been the guy last year. He should have been the guy this year. The Patriots hired the best candidate on the market. No question. It's awesome. It's an awesome hire. I think some of the staff they've built out is really impressive. I think McDaniels is maybe not he's a bigger name than maybe, I don't think he's a top 5 OC, but he's really good. And he's really good at being an OC in New England. That's where he thrives. Everywhere else, he does anything else, probably pass. But the one thing I will say that I'm disappointed in too is twofold. I thought Ryan Cowden's fine. I think you take him because he's with Vrabel, but that's not him. And Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith to me is not the epitome of, wow, I'm so excited about our GMs, in different roles and whatever. They all have stupid titles, but the non-GM role just doesn't really get me that excited, to be honest with you. I know Vrabel will have a huge impact there, and that's great, but still, I just would have liked one or two other hires. Maybe they'd make these hires eventually, but I would have liked to kind of just clean house and totally reset. And then you mentioned I'm a little worried it's the Tennessee staffs mixed with Old Bill. And it's I would have liked to see a couple of hires, I don't know, QB coach Mark Brunell, or hey, Josh McCown can be our OC, or I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but you get my point is I would have liked to see one or two other hires, non-Vrabel Belichick tree. I would have liked to see, I don't know, I can't think of a good example right now, but you got my point. Hey, Brian Hartline, I know you from, can you come be our passing game coordinator, receiver coach, and we'll give you another $1 million bump. You'll be the highest paid receiver coach in the league.
I would have loved that, by the way.
Yeah, I know you. I can convince you. You'll be our OC in 2 years. Josh will be here for 2 years to get Drake through it. We'll let Josh walk because, once we have to start really paying him. Just something like that would have made it an A+. A- for me. And again, different than the Glenn hire because I think Vrabel was the number one guy for the Jets too. But both organizations got their guy. And ultimately, that's what matters. I just, again, slight disappointment in the staff's fine, but it's not making me wow. Outside of Vrabel and McDaniels, you're not buzzing about the staff. Well, that's fine. You might not have to be. Like I said, A- for me feels objectively right.
Yeah, look, there's tons of experience on this staff, which the last staff, you want to talk about something that was cobbled together. I mean, that was as hodgepodgey as you could get. Here you have guys that have been coordinators or head coaches in the league, either on an interim or full-time basis. So there should be more problem-solving ability in the building and more ways to handle different issues that come up. Are there too many cooks in the kitchen? I think it's Josh's offense, and I think Josh is going to run it as such. However, Mike will have his hands all over it. Like Mike will tell Josh if he wants something done, that's how it's going to get done. I am curious to see. I think there's a lot of strong-willed dudes on the staff to see how it comes together.